Alright, today we're going to do trees and bushes. Trees are very simple and very complicated depending on how much you want to do to it. The best way that I've found to draw trees is depending on what style you're going to do. So say you're going to do you want to do an exact drawing of a tree and your whole focus is the tree, then you're going to draw a lot of details on it. If you're going to draw a tree in a background of a picture or in a comic book or in an animated video, you want the tree to be as simple as possible. And the way to do that is to pick out the shape of your tree. And so trees come in a lot of different shapes. The most simple is going to be round. And so the way you do that is you draw the tree stump and it just comes up like that, and then you draw a circle. And that's the most basic you can do. Now you can draw your roots here and you can draw branches. And that's the most basic tree you can get. So there's different shapes of trees. There's actually a lot of different ones, and what you'll see is that you can do crazy shapes and it'll look like a tree. So say, you want your tree to be tall and skinny. Here's your tall and skinny tree, and you just draw your stem going up like that. And there's your tall and skinny tree. Now you've got, this is the most basic shapes to start with. So say you want to do a square tree. It sounds funny, but there's a lot of square trees. I mean, just look at Minecraft, right? All the trees are square in there. So here's your tree, and there's your branches. Alright, so there's your tree. There's your square tree. You can do a fan tree. It actually looks pretty nice. And what you can start doing is adding texture, because no tree is going to be perfectly square like this, and that may be your style, but you can add some texture to it. So say I want to do maybe a fan shape. So if I go like this and I put some jagged edges to it, I can do a fan like that, and the tree stump doesn't have to be straight. It can actually come at an angle and maybe put in 3 arms. Really simple, quick and easy, and you're going to get your drawing done. It's going to be more of a cartoon style, but when you start adding the edges and jaggedness to it, it gives it a bit of texture, and the more texture you have, the more reality. So say your arms or your branches coming out look like this. If you want to add realism to it, you start adding stems coming out, so it branches off more. And the more that you do this, the more detail you add into it, like another arm coming this way, and here and here, the more realism it's going to give to your tree. So you can see it as it goes from a very basic circle to leaves over here, and then you can actually draw a leaf. Here's your leaf, and it's falling to the ground. And that's going to give you more realism on it. Then you can start shading it. And the way to shade your tree is to first, figure out where your light source is coming from, left, right, top. But then you're going to, if it's a basic tree, you want to do basic shadow. You want to do a very, very simple shadow on it. Half the tree is dark. So here's your shadow, and you do half the tree. So there's half the tree on that one. And then you do, like your cone on here, and you shade this part of the tree. So the light's coming from this area. You can tell it's coming down like that. And so you would have under your branches here, a little bit of shade on the bottom. Very simple, very basic. And this would be one solid color on this kind of a thing. If you wanted to make it look a lot cartoony. Then you can do a gradient on your tree where you start out dark and you get lighter and lighter and lighter as you go. Something like that. And the same with your stump. You could shade it like that, and that'll give it some sort of a depth to it. And it's actually kind of easy to put different sections on your tree using shadows. So say you wanted this to be different than this, to be different than this. What you can do is you could shade it, and this is going to give it some volume. So you shade it over here, and then you can shade it over here like that. It's going to get a little more depth to it. And you can see how we do that. And you can also give some texture to each root. And a lot of you are going to worry about perfection, and I would not worry about perfection at this point. What we're doing here is we're getting all of our bad drawings out of us. And you can see how it starts getting a little bit more detail. Gives it a little bit more realism. The more you add to it, the more realism you get to it. If you were to do this tree as a cartoon, it would literally be 4 colors. You know, you'd have here is your light green, your dark green, your light brown, and your dark brown. That's the whole tree, 4 colors. If you're doing something like this, you probably, you could have maybe 8 colors and then blend them all together. You can have a white edge here where the light is shining, or white on the backside here from, say, lightning striking or something like that. And you could put very dark spots in here that go almost into pitch black, and you blend them all together to make a tree that really stands out. And have a little leaves falling here and there. And you can see the wind is blowing this way, it's leaning over that way. You can do a really good haunted house with pictures like that. Or you can get into a lot of detail. And if you want to start drawing a lot of detail on your pictures, you want to go out and find a live model tree. And to do that, when you draw it, say you're looking at a real tree, you're going to see, roots that come up, they come out of the ground. You're going to see little knots that are here and stuff like that, and your tree is going to come up this way. There's going to be branches that go in a ton of different directions. And this was actually an assignment that we had in college where we had to draw a tree and make it look as close to real as possible. My pencil's down. Alright, let's get another one. So, you would go on and on drawing each blade of grass and stuff like that and try to give it as much realism as possible, and you follow the exact contour of the tree. And it's a much longer process. This tree would take you, like an hour to draw, because you're going to be drawing not only the shape of it. So here's your shape, if the top's coming up, and you got that. But then you're going to draw leaves. So like there's leaf here, and there's leaf here, and there's leaf here, and it's going to take you hours and hours to draw this, and you're gonna have a really nice looking tree, but you're gonna have to draw it 1,000 times to make it look right. So you got that. Then you get your textures of your bark that come down. So you got lines over here, and when you're drawing textures, you want to draw the textures and the shadows together. So for instance, this would be a face that shines in the light here. So this part I wouldn't fill in, but behind it where there's texture, you want to shade it. And then also there's going to be lines where the bark runs up. So you want to shade the lines too, and then run the bark up your tree. And you start getting, where you're like, oh, well, this is going to take all day. And you start doing little leaves the fast way. But you want to put them on the bottom mostly. At the top, you want to show your details. So on the top part, you show your details. Here's a leaf. There's a leaf over here. But on the bottom, it's just kind of a cross between a leaf and a shading technique. So you mix the two together, and you can start mixing and matching stuff like that. So over here where it's darker, we're not shading it in. We're just drawing the texture of the bark. And we're following the contour. So if you know that this is a round leg here, you want to draw the lines round like that. And they follow the texture of where you want it to be. Like that. So you've got, your shape. It gives it some depth and dimension to your body. Then you want to add a little grass. Very simple grass, just blades sticking up like that. Follow your shadow. Alright, so there you go, that's your tree. And you can spend a lot of time doing this. And really, it's going to depend entirely on what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve there. But then you got a little shading that comes over here. It's going to get darker in the middle here. And down at the bottom is always going to be your darkest spot. So just color that in really dark and try to put in some, some grass blades popping up, stuff like that. You can have, what are those called? Those little mulips. Put those out there. They, tall grass, weeds, whatever. Little flowers here and there. And you kind of get the idea of what's going on here. But it's just going to take a lot of time and practice. Draw your leaves on the ground, and these one detail of a leaf like this will give your whole picture depth. Even though like you're just drawing little lines under here, and it's not really a serious leaf, it's more of a shade. You get the idea because you see a leaf here. So all these ones blends together. All of these little hash marks here blend together with your one leaf over here, or your leaf blowing in the wind. There's your leaf. It's blowing in the wind. You can see it, and you associate this leaf with these leaves here. So even though you didn't draw out every single leaf, you get the idea. You get a pattern, and you can do one, here. And you want to do a little patch. So some leaves here. It's got a bad hair day, leaf day sticking out. And you get a couple of leaves there, a couple over here, which kind of blends into the texture. And so you're just giving an idea of what the tree's doing. And what this will do is I'll draw a shadow here. So I'm putting a shadow here, a dark spot. Underneath is going to give a light spot on top. So you can see this looks like you got a couple of dark leaves underneath here. It looks like there's a branch sticking out, and it actually gives you a new section. There's a new bulge in your tree. And there's your detailed tree. So you can go from very simple to very complicated. And I find that it's easiest to go somewhere in the middle, give them all different, but key is to practice. And then, I guess you can probably overdo it if you went too much and kept going. You could overdo it, but it's also easy to underdo it. So the more you add, the more detail it gives. And those are trees.
Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.